Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 10 best and worst brawlers for 2025. So just want to quickly wish you all a happy new year, because last year there was so much to talk about in terms of Brawl Stars, in terms of real life. It really was a roller coaster, but 2026, let's hope this is a good one for us all. But we can't not talk about last year's meta. There was a bunch of hypercharges that just broke the meta. It was pretty miserable until the end of the year, until they balanced things for the World Finals. But let's just go through the worst brawlers first, and then go through the best ones. So this is mainly on just like how they've roughly done on average throughout the entire year. I'm not going to be judging it off brawlers peaks, but I could also talk about that as well. But let's talk about worst brawlers. So starting off with Sam. So Sam only had literally, I think it was, when was it, like a day, maybe even a couple of days, where Sam's hypercharge was released at the end of March, and he completely broke the game. Well, he didn't even break the game because people didn't realize how strong it was, and then he got nerfed within a couple of days, his hypercharge rate. Other than that, Sam has literally been in the D tier and below for the entirety of this meta. That's just simply been because his hypercharge has taken way too long to charge up, and other brawlers can just charge off him. And with all of these like hypercharge stats and buffs that people got, it just made Sam a lot harder to push into them because it had crazy damage, we had crazy shield, etc. So Sam has really struggled in this meta. And yeah, it's literally been 2-3 days of a half Sam meta. Next up, we have Grom, and I don't need to even talk really about Grom, do I? Because Grom has been stuck in the D or F tier in the entirety of 2025. Even when his hypercharge got released, a few people were like, wow, this is a good hypercharge. I was definitely not one of them, and people quickly realized just how bad Grom still is. Again, for the casuals, Grom won't seem like that bad of a brawler, but in the pro players' hands, he's literally been, I've really used like a handful of times in esports for the entirety of the year. Also, as a fact, he hasn't received any buff in 2025. I mean, the health buff, yeah, that's just a standard for everyone, but outside of that, he didn't receive anything. So they probably still are getting decent numbers again for the casuals. That's why we're not buffing him, but he's just been terrible for a long time now. Jesse is next, and Jesse has to be one of the worst brawlers for 2025 easily. Again, another brawler that's a victim of being really strong at the lower end of ladder, but when it comes down to pro play, just never used. I had a look at my tier list over the year, and she was in a D tier pretty much the entire time, didn't go above it, and then the past 3 or 4 tier lists, she's been in the F tier. So she's received a couple of buffs. This just didn't help her out whatsoever. This is probably primarily, again, because if they make her too strong at the higher end of the game, she's just going to be breaking the lower end of the game. So Jesse's kind of always stuck at the bottom of the pro tier list. And the same goes for Rosa as well. I believe Rosa was pretty much D or F tier for the entirety of this year. At least for the second half of the year, she's probably an F tier brawler. And this is mainly because, I don't know, I think other brawlers just simply outrange her and just got better abilities. And it's hard for Rosa to really close the gap on a lot of these brawlers. And again, with all of these new brawlers adding different mechanics, you know, hypercharges, buffies now being released, it just makes it really hard for these starter brawlers, these rares, etc., to really just do anything in the meta. So I think up until Rosa receives her buffies, I think she'll be pretty much doomed to the F tier. And again, another brawler that is probably really strong at the beginning of the game because she's very auto-aim friendly. You can just smash the auto-aim button and you'll be pretty good. But again, pros can keep the distance easily. She's been stuck really low in the meta. Chuck is next on this list. So I was kind of debating whether to put Chuck down here because he's pretty much been in the D tier for the entire year. And since his hypercharge came out, it didn't affect him whatsoever in the meta. He's got one of the worst hypercharges in the game. So he's pretty much just stuck at being this one-trick pony, just only being good in heist. And still the pros can counter Chuck. A lot of the time the dudes still end up banning Chuck just because we don't want to deal with his nonsense, but there are ways now to counter him. There's a lot of brawlers that have been added that can simply stop Chuck in his tracks. So he's getting worse and worse. Again, maybe another brawler that gets reworked with buffies, but for the entirety of 2025, he's been awful. Clancy is next on the worst list, and again, another brawler that has just been stuck at the bottom of the meta for a very long time. I don't think there was a single time where he's been at least like above the C tier for the entirety of 2025. This is probably because of a few reasons. I think they're probably scared of what he once was when he was first released. It was very strong. His super was just way too toxic. It just delete everything. So they don't want to make the same mistake twice with Clancy, because he's a very... I don't think there'll ever really be a time where Clancy's kind of balanced, just like Gale, for example. He could just counter too much. Also, his hypercharge. I mean, his hypercharge seemed good when it was released, but at the same time, it just made his super even stronger. But I think his normal super was just good enough anyway. It didn't like fix his weaknesses like other brawlers did with their hypercharges. So yeah, Clancy been stuck at the bottom. So now moving into Fang, he's easily been one of the worst brawlers in 2025, and this is all because of how broken he was in 2023. He's still suffering from all the way back then. He's still a very popular brawler, but he's just not good, and this is because his hypercharge was literally killed. His hypercharge isn't even that strong anymore, but because in the past he used to just be able to fly through walls and team wipe everything, Supercell are kind of scared to really do anything to Fang. He was buffed like June. I think he received a couple of buffs and didn't really do too much to him. But yeah, even the pros don't really play Fang. He's just far too niche and yeah, just not been used at all in pro play. BB is next on the worst list, and I kind of feel bad for BB because sometimes I enjoy playing her, and especially I feel like in this meta she's a little bit underrated. But you just can't ignore up until her rework, and still after her rework, the pros are just not playing BB. And that's just because she just really lacks the range. There's just far too many brawlers again that can just feed off a BB too easily. And with her, I think I've not really put her above the C tier. Maybe she's been in C tier once, but pretty much just locked in the D tier. So like a good player can still make BB work. But again, pro players have not been playing her. I think she's only really used in a couple of heist maps, or to counter Hank, for example. She's got a good hypercharge. The rework did make her a lot more fun, but it didn't make her that much better. Maisie is next on the worst list for 2025, and boy, do we love to see that. Maisie was very, very toxic in 2023 at the end of it, and she's been kind of, I won't say underrated, but she's only usable if you like fully lock in and you're up against multiple tanks, then she can still be pretty good. But again, I think Supercell have learned their lesson not to really mess around with her supercharge rate too much, because she can just become too toxic. And again, she's not really been played too often in pro play, like a handful of times at World Finals and throughout the year. And in my tier list, I think I put her in like C tier at the beginning of the year, and I think pretty much stuck in the D tier for the majority of the year. So yeah, it's not been a good year for me. And lastly, for the worst brawlers of 2025, I went with Edgar. So with Edgar, I think there was like a brief period where his star powers got buffed, and I thought, okay, he's a little bit underrated, like I'm talking C tier. A lot of pro teams started to experiment with Edgar, but it didn't really materialize to anything. So if anything, probably overreacted a little bit, and so did the majority of the community, because he's pretty much been stonewall D tier in the meta. And this is just mainly because his super takes so long to get, and his super, when you jump on someone, you're not even guaranteed to kill them like all the time anymore. His hypercharge as well is not as good as it used to be. There's just other assassins that are just way more brain dead than Edgar at the moment, and even with the recent health buffs, he's not really been doing anything in this meta. So now we're going to be moving on to the best brawlers of 2025, and these are just not in, they're not in any particular order. And again, for the most part, these are going to be brawlers that were like steadily at the top of the meta throughout the majority of the year. So first off, we have Mina. So I know Mina was released, what, 4 months ago or so, but ever since her release, she has received nerf after nerf after nerf, and still, even after these recent nerfs, she's a top A tier brawler in the meta. But since I don't know, the past few months, she's always been at the top of the S tier, at the best brawler inside of the game. And no surprise she should be on this list, because she's just so versatile. She's an assassin, which is a damage dealer, which has got 2 broken gadgets, a really toxic super, and you literally move in with every attack. It is such a toxic combination. Mina is easily one of the best brawlers this year. Next up, we have another toxic assassin that was released, who just broke the meta for the majority of the year, Kaze. So Kaze, the first ultra legendary assassin, and boy, well, at first people just unsure on how to use her. A brawler that's 2-in-1, it literally took even the pros to figure out how to use her, at least a couple of weeks. And then she received like a health buff a month later after release, like at the end of June. But that just wasn't needed, because people figured out how strong she was. So you think about it, Brawler that's 2-in-1, her invisibility is just broken, her ninja super was so fast, her hypercharge could just delete people instantly. There was so many broken things about Kaze, and still to this day, after all of the nerfs, she's still an A tier brawler. She's pretty much been S tier since her release. an easy best brawler of 2025. Next up on the best brawler list, we have Lumi, and this is a really easy one. I know right now Lumi's probably sitting around the C tier in the meta, but we're talking at least, well, she was released at the end of March, right? I think up until her recent health nerf, when was it, like a couple of months ago, she's been easily at the S tier of the meta or A tier of the meta, and that's mainly because Lumi could do everything. So the reason why Lumi was so good, at first she had insane range, her damage with her coolback is just insane, her gadget as well, just too many supers, crazy. Her super can deal a lot of damage as well when you root people. There's just so many things to like about Lumi. It's the fact that not a lot of people could really close the gap onto her, but since she received quite a lot of health nerfs and some range nerfs as well, I think she got unload nerf, I can't remember off the top of my head, but she just received so many that eventually they've just caught up to her. But yeah, easily she was released at the end of March and she broke the meta for a very long time. Next brawler on the list is a very easy one. Other than the first couple of months of 2025, he completely broke the game, especially when his hypercharge first got released. It was way too strong. The homing was absolutely crazy, and it took them a full month to nerf this. But I think secretly, even before his hypercharge, Hank was pretty underrated, and then his true potential came out with the hypercharge. But literally throughout the year, he's been receiving nerf after nerf, whether it be to his gadget, whether it be to his maximum health, and even to this date, he was one of the only few brawlers that didn't receive a health buff. Hank is still at the A tier, at the top of the meta. He just seems inevitable at the moment. I kind of miss the days where I could go Hank and he was like the worst brawler in the game, and it would be so fun. Now everyone's just enjoying a good Hank. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to see it as a Hank main. Yeah, he's been insane for the majority of the year. Next up, we have Lily. So Lily has been really strong for, I would say, at least half of 2025. Her hypercharge got added, I think, sometime in May, and since that got added, Lily was just breaking the game. Well, not completely breaking the game, but the hypercharge was. The hypercharge was just so easy to farm up, and it's the fact that you could auto-aim it pretty much at every range and hit somebody. And once you take them to the Shadow Realm, thanks to a hypercharge stat boost, you just delete everybody, paired with gadgets getting reworked, so you get unlimited vanish gadgets. So it just made Lily such an annoying brawler. I think maybe she was S tier a couple of times in my tier list, but most times she was floating around the A tier, so not anything game breaking, but very annoying. Jaeyoung is next, and he got released at the end of April, and ever since Jaeyoung's release, he has been at least minimum A tier inside of the meta. Jaeyoung is the do-it-all brawler, right? He's got his speed mode, he's got his health mode, but primarily he's broken for a couple of reasons, and that was mainly because of the speed. It's just really hard to get within his range because he can constantly speed in and out of the enemy brawler's range. And if you approached him, most support brawlers, right, say if you're Mortis, you should be able to take down a support brawler. But with Jaeyoung, he's got his damage gadget and he could just melt through people. It recently got nerfed. It turned him down a little bit, and a few other nerfs along the way as well turned him down a bit. But in the World Finals, he was used a lot, and he's still used a lot to this day. So easily one of the best brawlers. Next brawler on this list is Ollie. So I was actually surprised. I thought Ollie was released in 2024, but it was at the end of January where he actually wasn't good for a whole month. He was probably like D or C tier in the meta. He was just very clunky. Then they reworked his whole kit. So then instead of muting himself, he just removes ammo, which was just so much better. And it made him such a strong brawler. They kept nerfing him, but he was like completely broken when they did this rework initially. And then they released his hypercharge towards the end of the year. I'm trying to think, I think it was September. Yeah, I think it was September. And that, again, just completely broke him. I think even now, I think it's probably the worst he is just at the end of the year, like C tier in the meta. But for the longest time, Ollie was just absolutely everywhere. He's just this super tanky, like assassin-like brawler. Or you can play him as a support brawler by hypnotizing people. His gadgets were very toxic for a long time. So many broken mechanics around Ollie. And again, this is probably the most balanced he's been since his release. Kenji's next on the list, and boy has Kenji been one of my biggest pain points of 2025, and that was thanks to his hypercharge added in May. Before May, he was pretty much a solid A tier brawler in the meta, like minimum B tier brawler. He was just really consistent across the board, super underrated, just depending on who who had the hands on Kenji because he's a pretty skillful brawler. And then his hypercharge got added, and it was a team wipe machine. They nerfed it multiple times months later, and it still just didn't do anything to his hypercharge up until probably a couple of months ago, where they removed his teleport effect. That was the only way it really calmed down Kenji, because the pull effect and teleporting onto people, it completely broke him. It was literally uncounterable. You couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, till this day, he's still like a B-A tier brawler in the meta, but that hypercharge was probably the most broken hypercharge of all time, pretty much. Next up on the list, we have Meeple. So upon Meeple's release at the beginning of 2025, a lot of people thought Meeple was really weak. I didn't think Meeple was too weak. It was just that a lot of people found Meeple boring, but same with Ollie. But Meeple, since release, I put Meeple in the B tier. Did receive some nerfs like later on in March, which really tried to tackle both of Meeple's gadgets, the Dice one and the Rage Quit. Both of these gadgets, probably the main reason why Meeple has been so strong for such a long time. And then over the year, they kind of messed around with Meeple's supercharge rate, health, main attack damage. When they nerfed Meeple's damage, he went down quite a bit in the meta. And then a couple of months later, I believe they buffed Meeple again quite a few times, and then steadily rising back up in the meta. And then Hypercharge came out, and you know the rest of the story. Even to this day, Meeple is an S tier brawler. So there was probably 2/3 months where Meeple wasn't too meta, and the rest of the year, Meeple was just A tier and above. Now moving on to the final brawler for this ranking, and I was a little bit stuck on number 10, to be honest. I think Finks, and there might be a few other brawlers that are just scraping the barrel here. You guys will have to let me know whether I missed out on anyone, but I'll put Finks in here because Finks has just been a consistent B-A tier brawler inside of a meta. There's been a couple of metas as well where he's been like the best brawler inside of a game, which has been good for him, but I think Finks has just redefined a lot of things mechanically. His super is one of the most broken inside of a game, just being able to dodge every single attack coming your way. He was one of the most fun brawlers in my opinion this year, but in pro play, he's always been like A tier in the meta pretty much, just because, again, when they buffed his movement speed later on after his release, it just made him such a versatile brawler. He's got so much to love about him, and yeah, Finks should be at least considered as a top 10 brawler for 2025. But that's going to be it, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Again, let me know whether I missed out on any. This, again, isn't like comparing brawlers' peaks, because else you probably have like M's here, for example. But yeah, that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.